Welcome to Best in Class Season 2. My name is AJ Madden. I'm a coach and consultant. I help individuals and organizations become best in class at what they do. I am honored to introduce our first guest of the season, Navy SEAL Commander Mark Devine. On top of being a SEAL, Mark has a bachelor's degree in economics from Colgate University, an MBA from NYU, and is a certified public accountant. He is also a black belt in Seido Karate and Goju Ryu Karate. At 21 years old, Mark was fascinated by Eastern philosophy. He embarked on what would eventually be a lifetime of studies in Zen meditation, the martial arts, and mindset training. At the same time, he worked as a consultant for PriceWaterhouse Coopers. 4 years later, Mark left the corporate world for a 20-year career in the Navy SEALs, where he led critical missions around the globe. The highest ranked trainee of his SEAL Buds training, Mark served 9 years on active duty, 11 years as a reserve SEAL, and retired as a commander in 2011. His leadership of teams was so effective, the government tasked him with creating a nationwide mentoring program for SEAL trainees. This program eventually became SEAL Fit. Commander Devine is also the author of 5 best-selling books, including 2 of my favorites, Way of the SEAL and Unbeatable Mind. Mark founded Courage Foundation to help veterans heal themselves holistically and restore a sense of purpose, hope, and connection. Driven by the passion to transform lives and to make the world a more compassionate, connected, and courageous place, Mark continues to inspire and teach with a personal mission of impacting 100 million people. Commander Devine, welcome to Best in Class. Honor to have you.
Hooyah, AJ. It's an honor to be here. Nice to see you, brother.
Hooyah. I've been following Mark's work and learning from Mark for at least 10 years. And it is some of the best information and training and coaching you will find on success, mental performance, achieving life-changing breakthrough goals, finding more happiness and peace of mind, and also more fulfillment and purpose in your life. Mark, as you can tell by his bio, his resume that I just read is one of the most impressive people you'll ever listen to or meet in your life. And Mark, if you're ready to jump in, I'd love to cover some of your key frameworks and tools and methodologies that have had a very big positive impact on my life and performance, as well as I know hundreds of thousands, millions of others through your books and your coaching, your training. The first one is the big 4 of mental toughness.
Mm-hmm.
What a life-changing, incredible
Right to
framework.
the belly of the beast. I love it.
There, well said, sir. Well said. And all of Mark's frameworks are so well thought out and so useful and so simple and science based. Uh, Definitely pay attention to what Mark has to say here. The first one of the big 4 of mental toughness is breath control. And Mark recently took me through a box breathing and tactical breathing session. And during it, I couldn't help but smile because I felt like I was learning to shoot a basketball from Michael Jordan. That is, Mark is a pioneer and one of the world's experts on performance breathing, tactical breathing, breathing for mental health, and you'll see why. Mark, can you share? Can you talk about your breath control work that you teach and why it's so effective?
Absolutely. But let me, can I pan out a little bit and talk about the context of the big 4?
Yes, sir. Please.
So, when it comes to performance, it's helpful to distinguish between, an event-based performance and long-term optimal performance. These 4 skills are critical for both, in slightly different ways. The big 4 skills are breath control. That's the first one, as you mentioned. The second one, I've called it different things over the years, but it's basically psychological or mental control. And then the third is imagery work, using imagery for performance enhancement. And then the fourth is task orientation to include micro goals. They're put together in that specific order for a reason. And probably if you say, well, these aren't new, and there's nothing new really under the sun. Really, the point is nuanced understanding of how to develop and utilize a particular skill for optimal effect, and then to customize that for a client based upon their unique situation and needs. So there's nothing new about breath training. It's, training the breath has been around for thousands of years. It's kind of the center post of Eastern traditions for mental development, such as yoga. And I started to work with the breath, obviously, in my own performance work with athletics through competitive swimming. This is in college. And so the breath became pretty clear to me early on that that was a powerful and important kind of driver for performance. But it really was just one piece of the puzzle, right? And I noticed that it was the breath work that then opened up the possibility or the potential to restore balance in the mind, to develop clarity, and then actually to be able to develop the mind in new ways that aren't traditionally developed in our culture through our academic models or our corporate training models. And then, so working with those two layers led me to appreciate the power of imagery. Like when you're talking about mental work, mental development, one of the most important ways that the mind works is through imagery. And we'll get into that a little bit. And then in order to, once we have a foundation of performance built upon breath work, mental control, and imagery, the effective use of imagery, we've got to then deploy those skills in a very powerful and focused way. And that's where the fourth skill is. Each one of these four skills that we call the big four skills of mental toughness are really kind of a container for several, actually quite a few kind of smaller nuanced skills, right? That can be deployed in a one-off situation or can be used as a practice. So that's kind of where I want to bring this. Like one of the innovations, I think, from my perspective as a coach and a trainer is to teach these as practices, because if you're not practicing something, you're not going to have access to it in the performance moment or when the pressure's on or when the crisis hits. It's going to be something that, like you pull out your notebook and say, what did Mark say in that podcast? You just aren't going to have the skill. Your mind is going to be out of control. Your body's going to be out of balance. You're going to be in fight or flight. So this is why, like with elite level athletics, practice is everything. The performance is not the main focus, right? 90%, 95% of the work is in practice, and only 5% of the time is spent performing. And if you didn't do the practice, the performances would be useless. You wouldn't perform. So anyways, if we talk nothing more than these big four skills, it would be an hour well spent. Back to breathing. So clearly, the first proof that the breath is important is to stop breathing and see how that goes, right? So clearly the breath is important. Breathing without conscious awareness is common. It's standard. It is what everyone who's not listening to this, hopefully who's not listening to this call, there's quite a few people around the world. The vast majority of humanity breathes with lack of awareness, lack of conscious control over the breathing. And what that leads to, and oftentimes they breathe through their mouth or partially through their mouth and through their nose. And studies have shown that breathing generally tends to happen about 17 to 22 times per minute, roughly, give or take. What this does, mouth breathing and breathing that rapidly leads to a shallow breath, which means you're not getting a full lung capacity of air. And also, when you're breathing, breath is more than air. Right? It's energy. It's life force. It's chi, and that's the Eastern concept, or prana, it's the Indian concept. So when you're breathing just a partial upper chest breath through your mouth, you're getting just a little bit of oxygen, which is like food, and you're just getting a little bit of life force, which is like the light energy that your body needs. And so you are not optimizing, the experience, right? So you're literally weakening yourself day over day by just breathing improperly or incompletely. Furthermore, breathing through your mouth is problematic because when you breathe through your mouth, it's kind of like gulping air. You take a lot of air in, but an incomplete breath. So the air doesn't fill your lungs, and you're not exhaling or expelling all the stale air and any toxins associated with the exhale, which is where you really get rid of a lot of the toxins in your body that you take in from the environment and your food and whatnot. So you're leaving your body in a toxic state by not breathing fully on the exhale. Furthermore, that mouth breathing tends to stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. So if you're breathing 20 times a minute and you're breathing a lot through your mouth, then you're actually you're aggravating your body because you're promoting and almost greasing the groove for a permanent state of hyperarousal because you're keeping your sympathetic nervous system constantly turned on, constantly stimulated. And what happens is the parasympathetic nervous system actually atrophies. The pathways that activate that atrophy. So the way out of this, AJ, is to take conscious control of your breathing as a very first step. Like, it's very difficult to do any further developmental or performance related work without getting the breathing back into control. Because when you start to breathe through your nose, now you're massaging your vagus nerve, which is activating the parasympathetic nervous system. You're getting that full lung capacity of both oxygen and life force, lifetrons into your system, which is energizing your entire body. And you're exhaling all the toxins out, right? And so each inhale and exhale is like a bellows. You're bringing all that life force and oxygen in, and you're exhaling it all out, and you're energizing the body while simultaneously massaging the vagus nerve and telling your brain that everything's okay, activating the parasympathetic nervous system. This gets you in a very calm state, cool and collected, and it's the perfect state for any type of performance event, or even as a Navy SEAL, for a firefight, which is the most stressful thing that a human being could possibly do. So, like I said earlier, just listening to this and saying, okay, I'm going to start breathing through my nose and I'm going to do it slow, that's going to have enormous benefits. But if we can turn it into a practice, and the practice, you referenced two practices, tactile breathing, box breathing. These two practices are extraordinarily powerful. One is the box breathing practice is to be done in a meditative session, like a meditative practice. And it is kind of the gateway to any type of meditative practice that you would like to do to enhance your performance. And so when you box breathe, what we're trying to do, AJ, is slow the breathing down to 5-second inhale and a 5-second exhale, but we're doing a 5-second hold after the inhale and a 5-second hold after the exhale. So the whole pattern takes on that box quality. 5 in, 5 hold, 5 out, 5 hold. That's a 20-second breath. So you're doing 3 per minute. So you think about that. You're doing 3 slow through the nostril, controlled breathing, full lung capacity. Inhale, you're holding your breath for a 5 count. And then you're doing that nice slow exhale, and then you're holding your breath. 3 breaths per minute. And we practice this every day. My recommendation for my clients is 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. Bookending your day. The morning, right when you wake up. The evening is great to do it as a transition between work and family again. So what happens over time is this practice of deep diaphragmatic box breathing, nostril breathing in that pattern, it really starts to change your neurological orientation or your neurobiological orientation toward breathing, and your breathing starts to settle into naturally to a 5 count in, 5 count out rate, which ironically is also a practice that we call tactical breathing. But what's interesting is when you practice box breathing every day over time, what will happen is your natural state of breathing will become the 5 count in, 5 count out tactical breathing. And the only time that you would actually shift out of that is if you're in a state of hyperarousal through, let's say, an exercise program, you're in the middle of a workout, or if you get triggered into some stressful event, you might start breathing right back into a faster pattern, mouth breathing. And then the practice of tactical breathing suddenly will be available to you because you've been practicing the box breathing. and you'll be able to down regulate back to the 6 breaths per minute. I've been teaching this now since 2006, starting with Navy SEALs and other special operators, and it's had a profound effect on their ability to stay focused and calm in the most extreme environments and firefights and in war. It's important to reinforce the practice component of this, right? There's something that we call arousal control that happens when you do this breathing, and that is that parasympathetic response, bringing that back into your psychological control. So all we need to do is think about it, and we instantly activate that slow and controlled breathing, which brings us into that calm state of rest and digest. This arousal control over time bleeds off all excess stress that you have in your body. And excess stress is stored in your body as fat cells and toxins. And so what's really interesting, AJ, is over time, just simply the practice of box breathing will have an enormous effect, positive effect on your overall health and even your physiological makeup. You'll actually develop back into your ideal weight and body composition just through the breathing. You'll have more energy, you'll be moving better, you'll be thinking better, more clearly, you'll make better decisions about your nutritional intake, and you'll be sleeping better, all of which then support this virtuous kind of cycle of improved health, improved body composition, improved weight, all built on this box breathing practice. It's pretty extraordinary. So if you're patient and if you practice it every day, it can be completely transformative for your life. And yet it is simply the first of these 4 powerful skills. You mentioned us going through the practice. What I love about box breathing is that, as I mentioned a moment before, it's kind of the gateway between the outer world and the inner world. It is the connection between the body and the mind, and then ultimately your spirit, or your that deep felt sense of source inside of you or flowing through you. It is the breath itself that connects those 3. And so we can link this to performance flow. When you're in a state of flow, you're in a state of perfect balance and integration while in action, while in motion, while in performance. And that means that your brain is operating at a very calm, kind of high alpha, low beta frequency. And the only thing that can get your brain in that frequency, unless you've trained it, is the breath, right? And so breath brings us into that performance flow state. And eventually what we can do is, through this daily practice where we train it every day, then we can, just with a simple thought and intention, bring ourselves into a performance flow state by thinking of the breathing and then reactivating the tactical breathing. And then all the benefits, when tactical breathing starts to have its effect on you through the practice, it'll once you start doing it in a performance setting, whether it's like before a game or after a game, or during a performance moment, your brain will immediately start to kind of shift into that flow state, because you've trained it to do that. It's the ultimate flow activator. I think this is one of the most profound things that people really don't recognize about box breathing and tying it to the way we use our mind and train our mind is, if you're looking for flow, for optimal performance, this is your key right here, is daily practice of this. So we can run through a couple rounds, and box breathing is best done, like I said, as a practice. You can do it standing up, you can do it kind of standing in line, you can do it filling time up, but you're generally going to have a limited value for that. You will get the arousal control, like let's say you're driving your car and you're inhaling and holding and exhaling and holding. It's fine, but you want to be focused on driving, and you don't want to close your eyes or soften your gaze or do all the kind of like mental training aspects if you're using box breathing in kind of an everyday walkabout situation. Having said that, it is still valuable to do that, but just for the arousal control. So what the real impact of power of box breathing comes from when you do it in a controlled manner, in a safe space, in your training space, whatever that is, your bedroom at home, or, you might have a space at the office or the gym, or maybe you might even do it, at a place where other people meditate. And you'll get into a posture where you're able to have a straight spine. For most men, it's seated, right? Like on a chair, at the edge of the chair, and you're going to sit up straight. Or, if you've been doing, yoga for a while and you have the hips to do it, you can sit cross-legged or sit on a stool like a Zen stool, which is how I started. And so you want to have a really relaxed body and you want to have a straight spine. And then you want to basically soften your gaze. And what that means is just use your peripheral vision. Using your peripheral vision, what that does is it essentially kind of like, we call it turning the light around. Instead of sending energy out your eyes in the process of looking to see, you soften the gaze and you allow energy just to flow in through the eyes. And so that soft gaze immediately begins to turn your mind inward, and then you can close your eyes. And if you're driving right now, certainly don't do this. Keep your eyes on the road. But with this soft gaze, closed eyes, naturally your mind begins to calm down and to slow down into that high alpha, low beta. And your attention goes from an outward attention looking out there to an inward attention. And generally you're softly looking in here. And what you're looking for really is just this calm, inky blackness, maybe some signs of light. This field of awareness is, when you find it in your meditation, it's described as so black that it's brilliant, like a brilliant inky blackness. And that is the field of awareness, or the ground of all being, or source energy. And the more you train yourself to see this with your mind, then the more you begin to connect to that witnessing, ever-present awareness that is an aspect of you. The Eastern traditions would consider this to be reality, and what you see in the outer world to be the dream. So you really kind of are flipping the switch on what's real and what's not real, or what's more real and what's less real. You're looking for that awareness, which is the ground of your being, the presence and intelligence and power that is the source of your thinking and is actually the source of your body. And so when we do box breathing, we turn inward and we're looking inward for this while we consciously connect with the breath. And we close our mouths and we watch the breathing with our mind coming in through the nose, and we slow it down to a count of 5. And then you do out through the nose for a count of 5. And so you start box breathing with this just calm, tactical breathing to prepare the mind. You're looking inward and you're settling everything down. And you literally have this feeling that your mind is settling down. You're releasing the grip on the conceptual mind, needing to think, needing to solve problems, needing to understand something. You just give it all a break. You're free just to roam inside and explore calmly. And then when I work with clients, I say, we'll breathe together by exhaling on 1. So 3, 2, 1, we'll exhale. And now inhale to a count of 5. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you hold your breath after the 5 with a lifting sensation. Don't clamp down, creating any back pressure. And you're just looking for that expansive awareness, expanding out in all directions. Now you're going to exhale through your nose calmly, getting it all out. 2, 3, your belly's tucking in, pressing the air all out. And 5, and hold your breath with that belly tucked in, it's creating a vacuum. 3, 4, 5. Release the belly. Inhale. Hold your breath. Your mind is expanding in all directions. Exhaling, calm, grounding, detoxifying, settling. Hold your breath. And in that exhale hold, you're just looking for that perfect, brilliant stillness. One more round. Inhale, taking all that oxygen in, all that life force in, filling up your lungs, feeling the energy flowing throughout your body, and hold. As you hold, you feel your awareness expanding in all directions, watching, observing the thinker. Exhaling, grounding, detoxifying, letting go of anything that doesn't serve you, and hold. Embrace the stillness. Good. Release the hold. Back into the 5 count in, 5 count out, tactical breathing. Breathing with awareness. The inhale, energizing the body. You can imagine light flowing in through the crown of your head on the inhale and just circulating throughout your body, lighting up every cell, every molecule. And on the exhale, you see kind of an orange light heading back out, and that represents letting go of anything that's not serving you, detoxifying, surrendering to what is happening right now. That's a very powerful practice for tactical breathing. Breathing in the light, breathing out whatever is not serving you. Good. And if you're doing this practice in earnest, now you can open your eyes and get back to driving your car, hopefully. Excuse me. It's a beautiful practice. Like I said, AJ, the key is in doing it every day, right? It's better to do, if you can't, or if you think you can't do 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes, just do 20 minutes in the morning. And if you think you can't afford 20 minutes, again, I'm putting air quotes around think because everybody can. It's just a prioritization of your use of time. Then it's better to do like 5 minutes of that practice every day than it would be to try to cram an hour in on a Saturday. It's the daily, consistent practice that is transformative for your mind and your emotions and your body. And it really is, like I said, the link that allows the work in the other 3 skills to be done.
Oh, brilliant explanation. Thanks for taking us through the breathing so people can actually feel the power of it.
Yeah.
And Commander Divine's one of the, oh, go ahead.
We could spend hours just talking about the breath, as you know. So thank you for letting me do that. It's so important. Like if that's all we talked about and that's all, and your clients or listeners really kind of get the importance of it, then mission accomplished.
Amen, sir. And like you said, it's without that, the other big 4 are nowhere near as impactful until you can learn to control your breath and start there. And I can attest to it personally. It can be life-changing work. You know, the box breathing, tactical breathing, the breath work, as Commander Divine describes it and explained it. He's one of the best in the world at this, world famous for this kind of work and a pioneer in it. And Commander, you talked about how it has so many different applications. It can calm you down in a difficult situation at most extreme level, a firefight, or a difficult situation at work, or a presentation you have to give to a group, or you're having a stressful moment, maybe with kids or loved ones. Gosh, what else? Okay, so there's maybe a third of the population now has stress and anxiety. And for me personally, it's been tremendous to help me reduce any stress and anxiety I'm having. This box breathing, tactical breathing, breath work, taking the time to do it, every day. And then also I use it, as Commander Divine said, throughout the day, right? As a supplemental or just to prepare me for different things. Right. This can be a completely life-changing practice if you add it, even like Commander Divine said, if you start with 5 minutes a day and just start there. And work your way into it. And you'll quickly find the benefits of your mental health, your physical health, your performance, whether you're an athlete or a CEO, a school teacher, a parent, a doctor, a police officer. This all has direct application, Commander Divine's breath work. The second of our big 4 mental toughness, I know you've called it different things over the years, and that's one of the things I respect the most about someone like Commander Divine. A true expert, a true master of their craft is always improving it over the years. It doesn't stay stagnant. So as long as I've been following Commander Divine, he's always improving his methodology. The fundamentals are there. It's the same fundamentals because he found those truths that work. And he just continues to refine and improve them over the years. To me, that's a true sign of an expert, whether you're a surgeon, a Navy SEAL, a performance coach like Commander Divine, an expert like Commander Divine. The best of the best are always improving their methodology, their framework, their tools, their knowledge. In terms of positive self-talk, things I've learned from Commander Divine over the years, 3 big ones here: mantras, power statements, and the concept of the sentinel. And for me personally, one of Commander Divine's power statements was life-changing. Feed the Courage Wolf, and I was having a difficult time in my life, and I woke up in the middle of the night. I was familiar with Commander Divine's concept of Feed the Courage Wolf, and I just woke up, and it hit me like a bolt of lightning to feed the Courage Wolf. And it was an instant change, positive change in my life, set in a whole better direction. And I actually have a wolf over on my desk here that I bought to remind me, of Mark Divine's, Commander Divine's teaching here. And Commander, can you talk about the positive self-talk, the mantras, power statements, sentinel, and in your terminology?
Of course. Yeah, so the second skill is built on box breathing, because box breathing provides that kind of ground of a stable mind, right? So your mind is stable and is fertile, right? To begin to curate the quality of your thinking. I have a saying, AJ, that if you're not training your mind, someone else is, and the results will speak for themselves. So the moment that we're born, the training begins, the conditioning begins. And some of it's quite innocent, and actually some of it is pretty insidious, right? The conditioning of commercialism and the conditioning of, social control through various mechanisms. It's all very real. And so it's really important for you to take your sovereignty back, basically, of your mind, and to begin to examine the conditioning that has been part and parcel of your very makeup, and to curate it, like a gardener would come upon a plot of land and be like, oh, it's just weeds and dirt and rocks. Oh yeah, that's the average person's brain. It's completely untrained. It's just full of all these concepts that have been pumped into them from family, from church, from school, from network news. And the problem is, AJ, that a good chunk of that programming, when you really examine it, is negative. It's built upon a negative story or a negative energy. And any negative energy that we take on in and we hold on to, even if it's wrapped in what I call a happy glad wrapper, then it's weakening you. We know this through the field of kinesiology, that negative energy actually leads you to be weaker than positive energy, or healthy foods, strengthen you, and like sugar will weaken you. And so the second skill is to begin to separate yourself from your thinking, which is a master skill. Like the whole field of mindfulness is all about learning to watch your thinking. But the problem that people have with mindfulness training is they haven't learned to separate themselves from their thinking. And so when they practice mindfulness, they just sit there and think. What I mean by mindful awareness and separating yourself from the thinking, which is where the sentinel practice comes from, is literally deliberately training your mind to develop the metacognitive capacity to watch your thinking in real time, as if from a distance. Box breathing takes us there in a practice. I call it the continuum. So we start, and so box breathing provides a framework to practice all four skills, by the way, when we're in a practice mode. And then it provides a framework to activate all four skills when you're in a performance mode. So what I mean by that is we can use the box breathing practice in a continuum way in our practice. And generally, you're going to have to do it for longer than 5 minutes. And the first 5 minutes roughly is going to be just arousal control, letting the benefits of what we just practiced kind of seep in to calm the body and to activate that parasympathetic nervous system, and to begin to kind of like calm and settle that mind down so you can activate that alpha low beta performance flow state. But now the next step in that is we develop more concentration power by focusing, and you recall doing this when we practice, by really focusing on the breathing pattern with like intense scrutiny. And we can even then bring in imagery and visualize the box being drawn in your mind's eye while you do the box pattern in your breathing. And what this does is it takes your mind, which has been diffused, right? You imagine your mind is just, energy is flowing through us. It's activating all the channels of the conditioning in our brain, which then is creating all these thought streams. The thought streams immediately spill into memory, and we claim those as ours. And so all of thinking is built upon this stream of thinking, or of energy activating thoughts, which then flow to memory. So anytime you're actively thinking, you are not present, right? You are pulling memories out and forming thoughts that either have a past or a future kind of energy to them, and it's very different than being present. All peak performance happens in a present moment state. So we gather up all that energy that's, the popcorn mind, there's different metaphors, monkey mind, and we really focus that energy into a single stream of thought. And that thought is basically concentrate on the box breathing and even visualize the box breathing. This is also where a mantra is very helpful. So you could inhale, recite your mantra, exhale, recite your mantra, and it just holds your mind in this very, very narrow stream of energy. So there's two benefits to that. One is called attention control. So we learn over time through the practice to radically control our attention and to place our attention where we want it to go. And if our attention gets distracted, like it's social media or gets triggered by something or someone, we're able to really rapidly process that and get back, let that go and get back to that which we wanted to, focus on. The second benefit is we have developed powers of concentration. And so anytime individuals engage in deep work or, whether you're an athlete or a CEO, you really need to be able to concentrate for long periods of time. And so this practice develops this superpower of concentration where you can just penetrate something and go deep and stay in that state of concentrated flow for hours. So that's the second kind of phase of the box breathing practice. The third is kind of getting to this second skill of the big four skills is to develop metacognitive awareness where you're able to separate yourself from thinking itself. This happens quite naturally once you develop that concentration power and attention control, because you tend to then become the monitor of your attention. And what that means is you naturally create this metacognitive shift where you begin to think about your thinking. And then as you develop this skill to think about your thinking and the skill to look inward for pure awareness, then eventually you find that thinking about your thinking becomes witnessing, which has got a different quality than thinking. And this is, it goes beyond where we can kind of dig into in this podcast, but witnessing is from the field of awareness itself, whereas thinking is working with memory and the thought energy. When from the field of awareness or witnessing, it happens in the now, right? There is no time associated with witnessing, right? It's instantaneous. Whereas any type of metacognition coming from thinking about your thinking, it actually is a much slower process. So, but we have to work with the mind to move beyond the mind when it comes to this practice of witnessing. The skill that I developed, or the tool that I developed, I call the Sentinel in the book Way of the Seal. And so what this is in your mind, we're using imagery now, which is the third skill, the big four, to simulate witnessing. And what we'll do is imagine yourself as like a warrior who's going to, stroll over to this beautiful field that represents like right side of your brain or right hemisphere, which is contextual awareness. And you're going to set up shop like a Navy SEAL sniper. You're just going to set up whatever imagery works for you. And that aspect of your being, which is contextual awareness itself, metaphorically or in your imagery, is going to look out across the field of your mind over to the left side, which is going to be much more mechanical. It's like it's the thinking machine over there. And you're going to just watch, and you're going to watch your thoughts. So this accelerates the process of developing metacognitive awareness and eventually the witnessing power of pure presence witnessing. Because what you find is very quickly that you can watch your thoughts and that you are not your thoughts. And this is a profound shift, right, for leaders and for performers to be like, oh, I went through my entire life caught up with my thoughts, thinking I was those thoughts. And suddenly you've separated from those thoughts and you're able to watch them. You're still having them, but there's another aspect of you that is able to watch those thoughts. Well, boom, now we've got something to work with, because if you can watch your thoughts, now you can curate the quality of those thoughts. And so the first thing you do is you got to look at those thoughts and you be like, oh, wow, I see that thought stream gets triggered by this individual or by this situation, and it invokes the same kind of loop, right? There's a triggering moment. There's the activated thought stream from the conditioning that you have. That conditioning gets fed because you start, riding that horse, so to speak. You're giving it energy, which then reinforces that thought pattern, and it makes it stronger. And so more ripe. So the next time that situation happens, that trigger happens, the thought stream's right there. And it just happens over and over and over. I call those fear loops. And a lot of times those loops of energy are infused with negative energy because they're built upon some false memory, right? Or else you wouldn't have been triggered. So you find that like almost 4/5 of your thoughts are conditioned reactions to some condition or person, which are triggered because of some past event which you have remembered poorly, right? You know it happened at a young age. You didn't have the skills to be able to process it, and so it got logged as a bad event, right? Or you were hurt or victimized. And so then these show up and they plague us later in our fear-based thought streams that are triggered when those situations or something that simulates those situations occurs. So when we develop this kind of metacognitive witnessing, we're able to see those in stark reality. And now what we can do is we can do something about it. Unlike traditional therapy, which says, okay, let's take that thought stream and let's work on it. Well, we look at that and say, you know what? It's important to identify this thought stream, but working on it should be a very light touch. And what I mean by that is appreciate that it happened, learn to accept that it happened, learn to forgive, whatever negative reason or person that it happened, especially yourself. But then in order to move beyond it, you've got to feed opposite energy. You've got to feed something else, right? And that you're evoking the feed the courage wolf mantra. So, that comes from, it's very simple. I found that when I was training Navy SEALs, I had to like simplify everything Barney style, because a lot of these young kids were 18, 19 years old. And if I talk like this to them, they'd fall asleep already. So I had to like create little parables and draw little, create simple training tools that they could understand and have immediate effect with. So one of them was that native story about there's two wolves inside of you, and the elderly gentleman or grandfather is telling his grandkids about this story, and how the wolf that you feed the most is the wolf that will dominate you. And they ask about the wolves and say, yeah, well, one's the wolf of fear, and the wolf of fear resides in your mind, and that's your ego. That's that thinker we're talking about. It's fear-based, it's negative, it's conditioned in a negative way. And then the wolf of courage lives in your heart. And courage, actually, core, the heart of the word core means love. Courage, core, heart. And so courage wolf is your heart intelligence, and that's love. And so the way to diffuse these fear-based mental loops that arise that you witness when you're in that metacognitive awareness is not to feed them, which is like talk therapy often tramples individuals over the coals over and over and over again, and it's feeding that fear wolf more, and so they end up kind of stuck. What you want to do is starve them, right? So you when you witness those thoughts, you intercept them, and you can intercept it with a statement. That's where the power statement comes from, such as, not that, I'm going to feed the courage wolf. And now you're going to imagine the courage wolf, imagine your heart opening up, and you're going to shift your attention there, and you're going to create a different dialogue than what was being presented or triggered before. And so that's what feeding the courage wolf means. You feed the courage wolf, and you generate a new positive internal dialogue and a positive relationship to that scenario, which over time starves that energy of that fear loop, of that fear trigger, until eventually it's so subtle that it doesn't arise anymore. It's a profound practice that has incredible benefits, because what you're doing is you're essentially training your mind to have a positive vibrational quality, and to have inner dialogue that is very supportive, both to yourself, to your body, to your performance, as well as to your team. So when your first go-to eventually is, or your mind immediately springs to, I've got this, easy day, piece of cake, I've been here before, we're going to crush this, right? I'm feeding the courage wolf. Then every one of those statements, when backed with positive imagery and emotional power, uplifts you and gives you strength. And so you're strengthening yourself as opposed to weakening yourself. You're developing that positivity and optimism, which is so important for performance and for teamwork. And it becomes a practice and you practice it, and over time that becomes your permanent state. You've literally trained and then entrained the vibrational quality of your thoughts to be very positive and abundant and optimistic. And frankly, those are the key attributes of resilience. So resilient people are positive people. Resilient people are optimistic about the future. Their glass is half full. When the challenges come, they don't go into woe is me and victimhood. They immediately look for the inner, the silver lining and for the lesson, and they grow from it and they move on with a smile. So that second skill built on box breathing and tactical breathing is profoundly powerful. And it bleeds into the third skill because we want to use imagery to support our internal dialogue. So that gives me an opportunity now to just dovetail into the third skill. Imagery work is powerful because we know from sports psychology that you can practice a skill, and if you do perfect practice, that your skill will improve, oftentimes even better than if you do just real world physical practice. And some of this, the studies with basketball players, and I'm sure you've talked about those quite a bit, has shown that to be true. Your body and mind will take on that internally rehearsed skill as if you're doing it in real world. Well, what we can also do is practice this idea of becoming someone that you may perceive that you aren't now, like this. So we have this what I would call a kind of spiritual blueprint of us as ideal humans. Like there's an ideal form that we have that's perfectly healthy. It's radiating positive energy. It's grounded, it's balanced, it's fit, and it's able to perform at a peak state, on demand. Unfortunately, because of the conditioning in our lives, that ideal state gets kind of corrupted. And so we end up growing up with limitations, self-imposed some, and others imposed by our culture and by our parents and by, the way we're trained. And so what we want to do with imagery is in those, when we get to become really effective with this box breathing practice, and we're able to get into that witnessing awareness where it's, we're beyond the thinker, we're watching the thinker, we can invoke imagery. We ask for imagery about this future ideal self. And this is where it kind of dovetails a little bit into metaphysics. And so you kind of have to validate this yourself as an N=1 study. Don't just trust what I'm saying. It certainly works for me and it works for all my clients. But what I'm saying here is that you can create, with a little bit of faith and asking your higher self, what is that perfect blueprint for my body? What does that look like? Who am I in that state? And with a little bit of patience, you'll get an image of yourself in that ideal state. And again, that image is going to be like perfect health. And the age of the body will be somewhere between 30 and 40, which is, the age, if you imagine like what we are going to start to learn in the future about longevity and aging. And once we dial it in, you'll find that basically you stop aging at around 35 to 40 when you understand how the body works, right? And that you'll be able to maintain this 35 to 40-year-old body for as long as you need it or want it. That is not a skill that Westerners really kind of understand or appreciate or would even accept, but it's something that has been known for thousands of years to the ancient yogis, right? And there's countless stories in both India and China with qigong masters and yogis who live well into their hundreds and who have that kind of like youthful vitality because they've learned through the proper use of the mind how to keep the body really, really fit. And so what I'm saying is they tapped into that blueprint, and so can you. And so you develop this blueprint. Sorry about that.
Oh, good.
Develop this blueprint for this ideal self. And then what you do is once you have that image, you practice it. And it happens at the end of your box breathing practice in your morning session. And you practice it when you're in that really open, relaxed, open mind awareness state. Then you evoke that image and then you add energy to it. Every time you visualize something, I use this metaphor. It's like if you took a a rubber band and then wrapped another rubber band around it, it's going to have, it's going to be a little weightier, and then another rubber band. And, you've seen people do that. And each rubber band makes this ball bigger until you got this big, heavy ball. Well, thoughts are like that and imagery is like that. If you think about the same thing over and over, let's say you're obsessing about a real screw up in the past, or, some event that happened to you, and you just keep thinking about it, back to that metaphor, raking yourself over the coals. Well, you're actually adding energy, you're adding layers of thought energy to that original, and you're making it stronger, which then draws you toward it or keeps you trapped in that energy field. So we want to diffuse, like ignore the negative energy. That's what I said, starve the fear, feed the courage. But then we create imagery of things that we want, right? And I'm not talking about like the secret style manifestation. There's some truth to that, but it's not completely true. There's a lot of other things going on here. But what we can do that is 100% accurate from my perspective and from my experience is create an image of ourselves in this ideal state at some point in the future. You don't have to have a time, because time is irrelevant from that state of pure awareness. And you practice that in your mind. What I mean by practice, you just evoke that image every morning after your breathing practice, when you're in that nice calm state, and you add energy to it, right? You can add light to it, you can add color to it, you can add sound to it, you can add, motion to it, you can add emotions to it. And what you're doing is you're layering it and layering it and layering it and layering it. And if you keep practicing that, months and months go by, eventually what you're doing is creating almost a gravitational pull toward that image, or that image is pulling you toward it. It becomes such a part of your psyche, your consciousness, that it begins to actually overlay and permeate the very cells of your body. And so you begin to become that image. What you're doing, AJ, and this is profound, is you're creating a memory. So just like you have a memory, you think of memories as things that happened, in the past, you're now creating a memory of you in your ideal state in some future time period, which eventually becomes now. This is profoundly valuable for performance, because in that ideal state, you're also in your ideal performance body and mind. And so when we're in a performance moment, or we're triggered, or it's stressful, and you activate the box breathing, and you develop that separation from your thinking, so that you're able to curate and say, no, not that, I'm going to focus on that. With practice of that image is there for you, and it helps you. It's like a partner. It helps you remember who you really are. And it gives you the strength and courage to go on in the hardest moments. And that energy of that image infuses your body, and it's just like that memory of that perfect basketball throw. It's there for you. And so you're able to access that performance flow state from the perspective of that ideal self body. It's literally one of the most profound practices. If your listeners kind of appreciate what I'm saying and begin to do this practice. I'll tell you that one personal story about this practice. The reason that I developed it was really quite by accident. When I was at Colgate, I did have a pioneer in sports performance psychology, and my swim coach, who had me visualize my race. This is my 1983. And so he had me with a stopwatch learn how to visualize my 200-meter breaststroke race. It was very hard to do, as you can imagine, to be able to complete all 8 lengths of that race in my mind. It took me months, but when I finally was able to swim the entire race in my mind, and this is well before we knew about Michael Phelps and all those, how valuable visualization is for Olympic athletes. What I found, AJ, was that every race that I'd completed in my mind, I was about 3 seconds faster than I'd ever swum in the pool. And so that all happened my sophomore year. At the end of my sophomore year, I was admitted to a study program overseas in London. So I went and did that. It was like 7 months. I missed most of the swim season my junior year. Oh wait, this is my junior year into senior year. So I missed most of the swim season. No, actually it was junior year. So I come back junior spring, and I run into the swim coach, and he says, "Hey, Mark, good to see you, blah, blah, blah. How was London?" "Great." And I said, he said, "Hey, we've got our championship race in 2 weeks. I'd love to have you join the team for that. And I was like, of course, part of me was like, I have no interest. I haven't been in the pool for almost a year. And, but I said yes. And so there I was standing on the block, the gun goes off, I jump in the water, I start swimming this race, and I have this profound feeling that I've swum this race before. And when I got to the end and I touched the pad, I looked up, I got the time that I had visualized a full 9 months to 12 months earlier. And I hadn't even been in the water since then. That stuck with me. I'm like, holy cow, wow, there's something going on here. So fast forward to 1987, and I was, getting my MBA, CPA, working on Wall Street, but I was deep in the study of Zen and the martial arts, and I had already kind of like had developed this metacognitive awareness, been able to see that the thinking that led me to this MBA program and becoming a CPA was really kind of implanted, right? It was planted by my family and by culture. It wasn't who I really was, and it wasn't what I was meant to be doing. All that came from this meditation practice that I was developing. So out of that process, I started to ask better questions and, who am I if I'm not that? What's my meaning? Why am I on this planet? And that led to, you referenced the 3 Ps, me developing this idea that I do have a purpose, and it's built upon some passions and principles that I hold dear. And that led me to discover that I was meant to be a warrior, and that led me to discover the Navy SEALs, and then I went for it. So the process of me getting into the Navy SEALs as a civilian was not easy, right? Because they accept maybe one person a year. But I went for it. I put package in because I had this like clarity that that's what I was going to do. But once I put the package in and they were saying, don't get your hopes up, like statistically, you have a better chance of becoming an astronaut. And that's not likely either. I said, okay, well, I've got to do everything in my power, mental power, to make this a reality. So I made some shifts in my physical training program, but I didn't need to make much. I was a triathlete and a swimmer and a martial artist, so I didn't have to do too much there. But what I did do is I began to visualize myself in that ideal state as a Navy SEAL, finishing up training and graduating SEAL training. So it's sort of like combining a performance practice with this idea of becoming this ideal self that is worthy of accomplishing and fulfilling this mission that you have in life. So I just started doing it based blind faith, right? Thinking, okay, I remember I had a good experience with visualization back at Colgate with my swimming. I think there's something here, so I'm going to use a similar technique. And I began to visualize myself going through Navy SEAL training. The background imagery that I used there was one video that I was able to find. This is, again, 1987, before all the TV shows and the movies. And that video is a recruiting video, and I watched it about 10 times, so I had a good kind of background imagery, and then I inserted myself into that imagery, and I practiced it every day. After my morning run, I would sit and meditate and do an early version of what I now call the box breathing continuum, and then I would visualize myself, going through SEAL training and graduating. And that imagery got clearer and clearer and brighter and brighter. Like I said, I added a layer in there, and I'd practice it every single day, just on blind faith. 9 months into this practice, I had this very strange experience where I just felt something shift in my psyche, where it can only be described as one moment, I had this belief / hope that I would be a Navy SEAL and that I would get into the program. And the next moment, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, with total certainty, that I had been accepted and that I would be a Navy SEAL. And about a day later or 2 days later, the recruiter that I'd been working with calls me and says, "Hey, Mark, you're not going to believe this, but congratulations, you got the billet to go to BUD/S training after Officer Candidate School, the only one that they gave that year." That was so profound that it became kind of a bedrock of my practice. And it wasn't until years and years later that I really started to understand, what's really happening with imagery when you kind of line up and use it from that ground of being, that awareness field. Is super powerful. That's why it's it's in there in these 4 skills. I know we've been going on for a while, but the last skill I will just say is basically bringing the first 3 skills into your actions. And people experience overwhelm very easily because they tend to look at the totality instead of the parts. And what we want to train the mind is to be able to maintain the totality in your contextual awareness while you radically focus on the most important part that you need to focus on right now. It's just like, the football player, just focus on this play, but keep the context of the game in your mind. Well, they have the coaches to do that. You as an individual leader can develop your mind through these three skills to have this vast contextual awareness where you're watching and you're witnessing everything going on, including your thoughts and emotions. But you've got to actually then get shit done, get stuff done. And so this is the process of radically focusing on the smallest task that you can, create, that is daisy chain linked to the next task, to the next task, to the next task, which then results in radical momentum toward the mission slash goal slash performance object. And you maintain contextual awareness of the entirety of what's going on around you and how people are responding to you while you're radically focusing on the task, so that you can make small micro adjustments as you go along. This is how Navy SEALs execute, rapidly their missions. They don't focus on just the mission outcome. They have a very clear vision of what the outcome looks like, and that they know that there's a range of acceptable outcomes within that vision, but then they radically focus on just the one target that's right in front of them, which might be, the insertion, and then moving to the target, and then dealing with, whatever comes up all along. So those four skills are money, but they're meant to be put together in a daily practice so that when you need them under pressure, they're just part and parcel of your performance toolkit.
Yeah, I love how you tied it all together with action. Number 4, right? The task, the micro goals, the first 3 lead to action.
They lead to action. Yeah, we're in this world. We're not trying to, with all these practices, with mental work, we're not trying to separate from the world. We're trying to be more fully engaged and present, but to be non-attached and not bowled over by the challenges, or to be tossed on the waves of the dramas, right? And so these practices have the singular benefit of creating great peace of mind and contentment while you're performing at a peak state and accomplishing whatever goal you set out for yourself.
Oh, well said. I hope everyone can listen to this episode again and take some notes and to put the big 4 skills of mental toughness into practice in any and all aspects of your life. Professionally, you're a school teacher, you're a sports coach, you're a doctor, you're a police officer, you work in retail, hospital, whatever it is that you do, you can apply the big 4 to be happier, more successful, less stressed, more confident, and create a better positive impact on everyone in your life. It's really a gift to others. When you practice these 4 things, you become the best version of yourself, which is a gift to everybody around you. And I can tell you from working with Commander Divine, he's one of the most service-oriented people I've ever met. He over-delivered so much. We talked last week and just continues to over-deliver to me. If you are part of any organization, Commander Divine offers a lot of incredible services. He's worked with some of the best organizations in the world. And you can also find a lot about Mark through his books as well. He's got a podcast. He's got a ton of information out there. I challenge everyone to dive into the Commander Divine universe. It's been a big inspiration to me. Commander, do you think I can do some rapid? Do you have time to do some rapid fire just on those last 3 key concepts?
Yeah, no, I don't do great with rapid fire. I go down the rabbit hole pretty far, so we'll try. Yeah.
We'll give it a shot. Well, it's all
Try not
good
to be too
details.
right.
3 key traits of the best SEAL leaders, yourself included. You were tasked to train SEALs. That's how Mark not only was a highly decorated SEAL and successful. The Navy, the government hired Mark to help improve SEALs in the program, and so he's an expert on experts, if you want to think about it like that. Now, in terms of leadership, what are maybe 3 key traits of successful SEAL leaders that we could apply as a school teacher, a CEO, a manager, a parent, anybody who's
Okay,
leading?
so this is an easy one for me, softball. The most effective SEAL leaders are deeply committed to self-mastery, but they do so in service to their teammates and the mission. self-mastery and service, which by the way is the two overarching principles of Unbeatable Mind. Secondarily, they're very humble. We say they check their ego at the door. They recognize that the brilliance comes from the team. The team is the leader, and that they're a facilitator, they're a servant, right? They're there to provide support and to remove obstacles. And they cultivate humility, which interestingly enough comes over time also through just the nature of the work, right? It's very humbling to get your ass handed to you every day in the most extreme environments, and so you develop this humility and gratitude, for even being alive. It's incredible. And the depth of trust that you have would be the third, is like develop great trust and loyalty in the team, right? I wish everyone could experience that level of trust and loyalty that SEALs have for their teammates, for their immediate teammates. It's extraordinary. In Sanskrit, there's 67 words for love. And this word, right, I wish we had a word for the love that you develop for your teammates when you work together in high risk settings, and you train together, and you grow together, and you party together, and you just accomplish some crazy things together. It is nothing short of an extraordinary bond. And the best SEAL leaders don't do anything to breach that trust.
It's one of my favorite explanations of leadership. I've heard you talk about that before, and the keys to leadership, and it's so simple, it's so effective. Simple sticks, complex doesn't. As you said when you were training SEALs, I had to simplify everything, and Chip Heath said that simple sticks, complex doesn't. So if you can rewind that and listen again to what makes a great leader, and you can apply it to any aspect of your leadership, again, whether you're a parent, coach, school teacher, manager, police chief, it all applies. Again, I study leadership for a living. I'm a specialist in leadership. I've written books about it. And Commander Devine's definition, and when he talks about leadership, I believe he's one of the best in the world at it. And he's lived it, and he's able to really convey that and teach it in the best manner possible. Maybe two more concepts here that are so important, I believe. And you can find this one. It's one of my favorite chapters of any book I've ever read. This is in Unbeatable Mind. It's the 3 P's and one thing, just maybe a definition of the 3 P's and the one thing, an overview. And I highly recommend people get Unbeatable Mind and look at that chapter. It's gold.
So I'll try to do this quick. So I believe that everyone's here on this planet for a purpose. Now, there's kind of the meta purpose. The meta purpose is to grow, to evolve. But there's a unique way that every individual is meant to evolve. Like for me, it was to be a warrior, and then a warrior leader, and then a warrior teacher, right? But the warrior was always part of it. And so I look at these as archetypal energies, not doing, but beingness. Like I didn't say my purpose was to be a Navy SEAL admiral. I said my purpose is to be a warrior. So that's the first P of the 3 Ps. Like really in your contemplations, meditations, is to begin to ask, okay, what is my archetypal purpose? And it'll be revealed to you, and to make sure that then obviously you're going to want to line up with that. Now you can be a warrior in many different ways. You don't have to be a military. In fact, most warriors are not, right? You can be a warrior in a lot of different ways. There's 2 other attributes that will help define who you are, and one of them is the things you're passionate about. So if you combine passions with purpose, now you're starting to get real clarity around like how you're supposed to live. But then the third is, what are your principles? Right. And so like I think about my principles: lifetime growth, lifetime learning, training every day, maintaining, a physical structure that is going to be fit and healthy for life. Service, to my nation was part of it. Service to my all of humanity is I've expanded that with my mission. So those are my principles. And principles provide kind of a pointer, right, as well as guardrails for your actions and behaviors. So passion provides the fuel, principles provide the direction as well as the guardrails, and purpose is really the overarching reason for doing it, as well as if you were to have a destination. There's no destination in life, but if you were to be, what are you running toward? It's running toward fulfilling your purpose. Now, all of that is theoretical. right? Like it's conceptual. Understanding what your passion, purpose, and principles are. It's conceptual. It's virtual reality. You're understanding it in a conceptual framework. So you've got to activate that in the world in action, like we were talking about earlier, right? Doubt is eliminated through action. Power is generated in the mind and then it's deployed through action. So many people get this wrong by doing too many things, right? By having multiple projects, tasks, missions, and they diffuse their energy. And what we say is just choose the one. Choose one thing, one mission that is in alignment with your three Ps. And it's okay if you think, well, there's other things I want to accomplish in life. Great, great. But there's only one that is for right now, right? That's your one thing mission. If you're doing one thing mission that's taking you off over in this direction, out of alignment with your three Ps, stop it right now because you're wasting your time. So it's really important to get clear, like, where am I going? Why am I on this planet? What am I supposed to do about it? And then what's my mission now? From there, then you can choose your goals and your quarterly goals, and then your monthly and your weekly targets. Ultimately, you should have radical clarity about what is the one most important thing that I'm to do today to to move me closer to that mission accomplishment. So.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I believe this is one of the greatest frameworks you'll ever find in terms of living a happy, successful, fulfilled life. All three, fulfilled, through service and living your purpose, happy and successful as well. So you'll be hard pressed to find a better framework than the three Ps and the one thing. And again, that's found in Unbeatable Mind, a great chapter there. And then lastly, and I'll frame this in terms of the theme of this season of the podcast is the 10-year club. And to get into the 10-year club, you can't buy into it with $1 billion. It can only be earned. And it is 10 years, one thing with a 1% better than yesterday mentality. 1% better every day. 10 years, one thing, 1% better than yesterday. So you could do something for 10 years. You could do three things for 10 years and you're scattered. Okay. You can do 10 years, one thing, and not without that continuous improvement mindset, that Kaizen, that learning mindset. So you'll make marginal improvements, but it's 10 years, one thing, 1% better than yesterday. Now, Commander Divine is one of these rare individuals that's in multiple 10-year clubs. As a SEAL, as a very successful businessman, he started several multi-million-dollar businesses. As a martial arts expert, as an author, as a teacher. What am I forgetting here? I feel like there's even more, but if you're just in one club, that's good.
The most important one, family man.
A family man, 10 years, 1% better than yesterday, one thing. So he's in multiple 10-year clubs. And I use that for inspiration for me, that Commander Divine's focused on one thing, 10 years, and many of these things, 20 years, 30 years. So just find your one thing, 10 years, right? Your one focus, your purpose, your mission, for something gets you excited, your passion. 10 years, one thing, 1% better than yesterday, whatever that is for you. Could be being a parent, a family man, in your career. And the reason I bring this up again, so you can look at someone like Commander Divine for inspiration, that he's in multiple 10-year clubs. And in today's episode, he's laid out how to be successful with those 10, how to do it with the big four, the three Ps and one thing, how to lead others. He's laid out the blueprint how to be successful and really do this. Again, you can't buy your way into this with $1 billion. It could only be earned at the 10-year club. Now, one of my, maybe we can wrap it up with this one. One of my favorite things, mantras, affirmations, is we are capable of 20 times more than we think we are. And I learned that from Commander Divine. And that is a great inspiration for anyone who wants to be in the 10-year club. Commander, can you just explain that one to the audience? It's a very inspiring thought, and I believe it 100%.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we're limited only by not recognizing the limitations that have been placed on us through our conditioning and our training. So everything we've talked about in this show, AJ, will begin the process of unlearning, of deconditioning the mind to get rid of the limiting thought structures and concepts and beliefs so that you can recondition your mind for almost limitless potential. 20x potential means essentially that you're capable of 20 times more than you think you were, because you, when you train this way and you deconstruct the things that are holding you back, suddenly you find this vast reservoir of power, of energy. And when you overlay that image of you and your ideal self in alignment with your 3Ps and one thing mission, and then you practice that every day, like we talked about, then that becomes this intensely motivating and attracting force, which also is limitless in potential, right? Now, when you combine those with a team that is practicing and working together, leveraging these same skills, you got 20x times 20x, multiplied by every teammate. And what does that geometric explosive potential look like? This is how we as humanity are going to navigate the exponential AI age. Like, I don't fear personally that I can't keep up with AI, because, the potential of the human mind is just barely being scratched by the average person. We have vast potential, vast creative powers. We create our own worlds, in fact. So just think about how powerful you are as a human being to create the world that you live in. So when these skills that we talked about here become commonplace and they become something that are practiced and developed in school and at an early age, then you're going to see humanity completely transformed. And partner with AI in a really positive way to really heal a lot of the problems that humanity has created through negative thinking, fear-based thinking, and limited linear economic models and stuff like that. So I have a positive view of the future because of this 20x potential concept, which everyone has access to. But you got to take control of training your mind. If you're not training it, someone else is training it for you, and it's going to keep you limited.
Thank you, Commander Divine, for over delivering and starting off season 2 for us in a very powerful way. Where can everyone find you?
I live in Encinitas, California. You'll find me out training fucking. No, markdivine.com is kind of like my catch-all website. Mark Divine Show is on, Apple, iTunes, as well as Spotify. My training of the nature that we talked about here is at unbeatablemind.com. So you go check that out and join us in our 30-day challenge, or I've got a year-long mastermind / training team I call Unbeatable Team, which is a powerful experience. If you want to learn more about those things, you can just send an email to me, info@unbeatablemind.com, and we'll kind of hook you up with a call and see what's interesting for you. Thank you for having me on the podcast, AJ. It's phenomenal, really enjoyable.
Oh, excellent. Honor to have you. And I can attest to Commander Divine's work. He over delivers, and he's one of the best in the world at helping people perform better, live a better life, happier, more fulfilled, less stress, more happiness, more self-confidence, better organizational performance. You'll be hard pressed to find anybody better than Commander Divine at what he does. Thank you again, Commander, for over delivering.
Yeah, it's been my honor. Thank you. Hoo-yah.
Hoo-yah, sir. Thank you. Take care.
You bet.